Hello there, Keith King here from the website ancientsymbolist.com. This video shows how the ancient priests could predict an event that would happen in the future. It ties in with my third podcast. If you have only just found this website and my videos, please give me the courtesy of watching it until the end. I'm quite sure you will have gained something from it, and it will stir your conscience. To illustrate how to predict time, I will call on the assistance of two great giants. They are called Gog and Magog. They are known as the protectors of the square mile of London. Once a year, at the occasion of the Lord Mayor's show, the two giants lead the procession through the streets of London town, but their real purpose is to tell the time. The two giants, Gog and Magog, are located at the Temple Bar in London, outside the church called St. Martin's in the West. Every 15 minutes they bang the gong once. Then on the hour, depending on the time of day, they bang the gong the number of times the hour relates to, i.e. 9 o'clock receives 9 bangs on the gong. These two giants measure time continuously throughout the year. The two giants are placed as statues in the great hall known as the Guildhall. The word or name Gog is the movement of the earth around the sun over 1 year. The letter G is also shown as the spiral, which is created as the earth moves from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, and as it returns again to the northern hemisphere. It also creates another spiral or letter G. So the giant Gog is the term used to describe how the earth moves around the sun. He is often shown as one of two pillars, the other pillar being called Magog. He is shown next to Gog, marking time. The two letters Ma refer to the Egyptian word for truth. Ma is often used in the word karma, where Ka refers to the carriage or the body, and Ma refers to telling the truth. In Masonry, Ma or Ma means truth. The letter S is the movement of the sun, just like a sine wave, and On refers to Orion's belt and the cosmos. As every Mason knows, they seek the truth. They then discover how the cosmos works by studying the sun, the moon, and the stars. Just something to think about for those of you who are into allegory. The original word for the Hebrew God was Elohim, so the Freemasons created their meeting place to include El and God, and called their temple a lodge. The letters G-O-G and E-L have now morphed into the largest internet search engine, Google, but Gog and Magog were not the original names of the two great pillars that showed to mankind the secrets of the universe. Masonic legend explains that Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, visited Noah and told him about an impending flood. According to the legend, he then told Noah that all of the knowledge known to the antediluvians was written upon two great pillars, one made of stone and one made of brick. After the flood, Noah was to search for these two pillars and maintain this knowledge intact for future generations. These two pillars were to be found in Egypt in the form of obelisks, and the hieroglyphs and symbols placed upon them were to be deciphered. Some of these pillars found their way to Europe and given names such as Cleopatra's Needles. The one in Paris shows mankind kneeling and thanking his deity. The one in London along the embankment displays symbols relevant to telling the time, such as the Egyptian all-seeing eye and the Ankh. The first name given to these two pillars came from Moses, whose name is inscribed upon Cleopatra's Needle in London under the name Thoth-Moses. Moses, who was taught in the temples of Egypt, named them the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud. The pillar of fire represented the sun and the longest day of the year. The pillar of cloud represented the moon and the shortest day of the year. These two pillars would be shown with maps of the earth as a terrestrial world, and with maps of the star patterns referring to the celestial world. When King Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, he had replicas of these two pillars erected outside the temple and called them Boaz and Jachin. Boaz, because he married a Moabite princess called Ruth and brought her royal blood into the bloodline of David and Solomon, and Jachin, whom he made ruler of his priests. The word Raja was the Sanskrit name of Indian rulers. Solomon's priests would later be known as the Sanhedrin, teachers of Sanskrit. These two pillars, called Boaz and Jachin, referred to night and day, or the two ends of the spectrum. However, another of their purposes was to show the movement of the sun over the course of the year. And for this knowledge, I have the Masonic group called the Blue Collar Freemasons to thank. On their website, they have called these two pillars Cancer and Capricorn. Here is their image of the two pillars, Cancer and Capricorn. I am going to turn them on their side and refer to them as the letter H. They represent the equinoxes, Cancer and Capricorn. I'm going to place a line in the centre to represent the equator, which I'm now going to refer to as the letter I. And now I'm going to show the sun's movement over the course of the year. It starts on the autumn equinox, the 21st of September. It travels downwards to the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere on the 22nd of December. It then travels upwards again to the equator line. This is the spring equinox, when it travels upwards again to the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the 22nd of June. And then it travels downwards again to return to the equator line on the 21st of September again. This has taken 1 full year to accomplish. As you can see, this has now drawn the letter S. So S represents the movement between the letter H and touching on the equator which is the letter I. This forms the word Ish. Ishtar was the name of the Babylonian goddess. Ishtar has two wise owls placed alongside her. The gate she built at Babylon is replicated in the Berlin Museum. Ish became a language. Turkish, Spanish, Irish, English. The movement of the sun is shown under the two giants. Tours of London on a red bus take in the two giants Gog and Magog, but the MC does not have enough time to explain this connection. With this knowledge of the movement of the sun over 1 year, the ancient priests could determine the arrival of a newborn child. An example of this involved them being able to predict when the baby would be born. This mosaic window illustrates how the three magi determined the time and location of the arrival of the infant Jesus. Starting from the left mosaic window, where one of the magi is using an astroglobe with the signs of the zodiac and the hieroglyphs of the planets to locate the destination of the newborn baby, who is now placed in the right window. With their knowledge of the cosmos, there is a way to determine, to a very close proximity to the day, a baby would be born, if you were to know the day it was conceived. This knowledge was not given to everyone. You can see by this mosaic window that the midwives were in attendance when the baby was being born, and all the symbols of its bloodline are on show. But the man hiding behind the pillar insinuates that this is secret knowledge. The image that represents 9 months, the time when a baby would be born, is the fertility symbol. It is drawn as 3 spirals. Each spiral represents 3 months. The Earth, as it journeys around the Sun, appears to draw the symbol for infinity over 12 months. When we break down over time how the Earth appears to draw this symbol, we find that if we have a starting point, such as an equinox or solstice point, we can draw each of the starting stations of the spiral and then each of its ends. This is how it goes. Here I am, some 25 years ago, drawing how the spiral is created. Place a staff or a wand in the ground on the 22nd of March or the 21st of September, which is the spring equinox, and follow the movements of the sun over 3 months. This is the symbol it produces. For the next 3 months, it returns to the centre. For the next 3 months, it draws a 6 or a 9 in the opposite direction. Returning once again to the centre. This is the sun sign of Cancer, or the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang. If we add one more spiral, find 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. This is the gestation period for a child in a woman's womb. The spiral, the most important of all symbols, is shown everywhere, such as on the entrance to the education department, where two pillars are also placed at the entrance. This image, presented by the blue-collar Freemason, shows the two pillars as the boundaries of the sun's movement between the two tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. In another of the blue-collar Freemasons' images, they highlight how the two spirals are drawn, one going in one direction and another spiral going in the opposite direction between the two pillars. Only now the pillars of fire and cloud are shown. The spiral is the symbol also associated with the golden ratio by a predetermined number 61.8. The result is the spiral or the letter G. The letter G is displayed upon the centre of the mosaic pavement consisting of square boxes placed in every Masonic lodge. The golden ratio is said to be involved in nearly all the elements that make up the earth and the universe. An example of this is the pine cone shown here in the hands of the deity. All of these symbols can help us understand the movement of the sun, the moon and the stars, and the planets, and give us the ability to predict time. All of these symbols associated with time have been known from the very beginning. This is not new. Imagine reading this passage from the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 25. There shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and know exactly which signs or symbols are associated with each of the heavenly bodies. Nearly every building shows the spiral somewhere upon its walls. One particular pillar, called the Ionic pillar, always displays the spiral. The Ionic pillar is known to the Masons as the pillar of wisdom. The spiral is also known as the shepherd's crook. It was placed in the hands of the pharaoh. The spiral is shown connected to the all-seeing eye. The eye has a staff placed under it. Attached to the staff is the spiral, but the use of the spiral was older than the Egyptians. In their book Uriel's Machine, the two Freemasons, Christopher Knight and Robert Lomax, have visited the ancient site of Newgrange in Ireland, where before entering the main chamber there is a huge megalithic stone. Upon the stone, numerous spirals have been carved into the stone. To gain entrance into the main chamber, you must pass through a doorway. Above this doorway is a portal. Between the doorway and the portal, there is a lintel. The lintel has 8 crosses carved into it. Each cross represents 1 year. So the 8 crosses represent something that has a cycle of 8 years. The object that has a cycle of 8 years is the planet Venus. What Christopher Knight and Robert Lomax have deduced from their observations is that once in every 8 years, the planet Venus comes up 24 minutes before the sun and shines a light through the portal above the door and travels 53 metres along a passage previously lined with quartz stone. The stone was placed there to reflect and to increase the light. At the end of the passage is a chamber. Upon the wall of the chamber is carved 3 spirals. On this occasion, Venus was known as the bright morning star. Newgrange was built centuries before the pyramids by workers hauling 250,000 tons of granite from the Wicklow Mountains 70 miles away. I have searched for years to find a building that contains the knowledge of 8 crosses. And then one day I visited Christchurch in New Zealand, and upon the entrance doorway to the cathedral there are 8 crosses. The most stunning window in this church shows Mary Magdalene anointing Jesus by washing his feet. Now back to predicting how to tell the time using symbols. The moon takes 29.5 days to go through its phase. By multiplying 29.5 by 12 gives us 354 days of the year. This is 11 days short of our known year, so its accuracy in determining a proper year cannot be used. The spiral is our next symbol. It takes 3 months to produce, but because the sun appears to stand still for up to 3 or 5 days, when it reaches the solstice position, it too cannot be used to predict a proper year. Our next symbol is the cross, which represents 1 year. It is produced by marking the sunrise and then the sunset on the longest day, and then marking the sunrise and the sunset on the shortest day of the year. To produce an accurate cross, the ancient Celtic cross was used. By marking inside the spaces free within the cross, the solstice points of the year were determined. Celtic crosses were placed everywhere across England and Europe to mark the start and end of each new year. This particular Celtic cross also has the solstice positions marked on the outside of the cross. The St Andrew's cross, first used by the Celtic people of Scotland, produced 4 perfect angles of 90 degrees. At the latitude 55.5 degrees from the equator. Both Edinburgh and Roslin Chapel are situated at 55.5 degrees from the equator, but this yearly cross was out by 1 day every 4 years, and back then the leap year of adding 1 day had not yet come into existence, so there was yet one more symbol that could correctly realign the yearly calendar precisely. This symbol had multiple descriptions. It could be shown as the rose or the pentagram. It could be shown as the ankh or its sister symbol, the orb. It could also be shown as the apple, as the centre of the apple shows the 5-pointed star.
If we cut an apple horizontally through its centre, we find it has a perfect 5-pointed star inside.
All of these symbols represent Venus, or its movement of traversing around the sun every 8 years. It is known as the Dance of Venus. According to Christopher Knight and Robert Lomax, in their book Uriel's Machine, before the atomic clock was created, the most accurate way to measure time was to follow Venus through 5 of its cycles around the sun, remembering that each cycle took 8 years. Therefore, Venus would take 40 years to draw 5 pentagrams. But at the end of the 5 cycles, there would only be a few seconds between the start of the symbol and the end of 5 symbols. Remember that Moses could not let the Israelites enter into the land of milk and honey until they had journeyed for 40 years in the wilderness. Every 40 years, the high priest could reset the most important festival days of the year with complete accuracy. One such festival day was the Passover feast, which occurred on the spring equinox. This usually took place on the 21st of March. Today, for Christian, Easter is celebrated on the day when the sun changes course again. It occurs on the first Sunday after the full moon, following the spring equinox on the 21st of March. As you can see, getting the day of the year correct is no mean feat. Something to think about is the one day of the year when the sun once again changes direction. We call this Xmas, X being the symbol for 1 year. This chamber at the end of the passage in Newgrange appears to be used as a birthing chamber. Once every 8 years, when Venus arose 24 minutes before the sun and lit up the passage and the chamber, the high priest or chief amongst the tribe would inseminate a young woman and continue on his family bloodline. The baby would be born on the 21st of September, the autumn equinox in Europe, when 3 spirals in time had elapsed. Here in Canterbury Cathedral, the 3 wise men are each holding a spiral to indicate a period in time, 9 months. I wonder if, when referring to this statement in the Bible, 666 is the number of man, it really refers to when 3 spirals have been produced, a child is born. When the missionaries arrived in the Pacific Island, they soon realised that the indigenous people were aware of this knowledge. An example is the Maoris of New Zealand, who would tattoo the spiral upon their bodies. The New Zealand airline would place the spiral upon their airplane. I have recently returned from the Pacific island of Samoa, where I visited their main church. It is painted blue to match the sky. Inside the church, the vaulted ceiling is a masterpiece. I was in awe at the craftsmanship of the building, but the real story was to be seen at the very pinnacle of the building. The original villagers were all seated in a circle, with the head of the villagers in the centre. Tied around his neck, and only his neck, was the spiral. The spiral and its use in predicting the time was worldwide. Finally, in Australia, the government in 1999 have dedicated a $1 coin to the pensioners of the country. It has 3 spirals engraved upon it. If you have gained anything from this video, please subscribe and press the like button. The end.